Welcome to Fast Tracking the Day of God, a podcast for those that think we should stop delaying the eternal blessings our Creator has for His children. For those that yearn for the day when evil, pain, and suffering will disappear for good. If you don't care about speeding Jesus' return, this podcast might not be your cup of tea. However, if you want to revive your interest in preparing yourself for the day when eternity materializes, this presentation is for you. When God created the earth, He had a plan of never-ending joy, happiness, and love for the people who would live here. As a matter of fact, the word Eden means delight, pleasure. Humans were created in a relationship with God, with each other, male and female, and with the environment. Adam and Eve were tasked with tending to and keeping Eden. Their purpose was to serve and protect the garden, mirroring God's governance of love and righteousness for all life on earth. Genesis 10 portrays all of humanity as a single extended family, descending from Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, through a branch genealogy of 70 male descendants. This unique perspective in the ancient world emerges after the flood, when God instructed humans to repopulate and fill the earth. In chapter 10, we read about Nimrod. His name derives from a word that means to rebel. From patriarchal to monarchical form of government, the first imperialist. He founded Babel, Babilu, the gate of God, Nineveh, and other cities. God called Abram after the Tower of Babel incident, where humanity's defiance against God's commands resulted in a failed attempt to construct an enormous tower, divine intervention, and the scattering of people. Abram, just as his family served idols, there was nothing special in him. He was an ordinary man who was no different from anyone else. It was not Abraham who made himself different from others. It was the way he responded to God's call. He was called twice. The first time when he lived with his family in Ur of the Chaldees, Acts 7 verse 2. Then the second call took place in Haran, Genesis 12 verse 1. Our Heavenly Father is very patient. He waits for us. Just like God called Abraham, we are also called to be a blessing to this world. Send us an email to indestructiblekindness@gmail.com for more details. Centuries later, in Exodus 19 verse 5 and 6, God outlines that His people were to be a kingdom of priests, devoted to Him and a blessing to all nations. The priest's role was to represent God to the people. God wanted the whole nation of Israel to do just that. Before entering the land of Canaan, God reminded the Israelites to be careful and make sure they won't forget God's instructions. Just like them, it is in our best interest to make sure we do as God told us to do. Keep in mind that if we are still here, it is because we have not completed our assignment. If Israel had followed God's instructions, they would have had such prosperity that would have produced the admiration of other nations, to the point that they would have been drawn to the Lord. Isaiah 19 verse 23 through 25 talks about Egypt and Assyria worshiping with Israel. The two superpowers would have joined Israel in being a blessing to the nations. That was the kind of influence God wanted His people to be. Unfortunately, Israel rejected God as their king and asked Samuel for a monarch like the neighboring nations. Centuries before, God foresaw the issues that would arise from having a king other than Himself, and He provided instructions to address these potential problems in Deuteronomy 17 verses 14 to 20. Our Creator knows our selfish hearts. He provided safeguards. For example, the king was not only to study God's instruction, the Torah, but he was to write a copy of it. In 1 Corinthians 10 verses 1 to 4, the Apostle Paul reminds us to learn from Israel's experience. In Matthew 20 verses 25 to 28, Jesus warns us against following the rulers of the Gentiles, who tend to become tyrants and dictators. He reminds us of God's standard of service. He points to the servant leader's model that reflects God's way of government. Unfortunately, we know what happened when Constantine relocated the empire's capital from Rome to Constantinople, and how church governance subsequently changed over time. In theory, Israel was aware of its mission. Even today, the emblem of modern Israel based on Isaiah 60 and Zechariah 4 evokes the idea of Israel being the light of the world. God pleaded with them for centuries, and unfortunately when they failed their mission, the neighboring nations came to wage war instead. The captivity was the result. God's intention is that the whole world is illuminated with His glory, Isaiah 49 verse 6 and 61 through 12. Where Israel failed, Jesus triumphed. In Luke 2 verses 29 to 32, Simeon refers to Jesus as the light to the nations. You know, Jesus didn't have 11 or 13 disciples. He had 12 according to the number of tribes of Israel. Then Jesus, the light of the world, empowers his church to be the light of this world. We are the light for this planet. That's why we are entrusted to share the gospel to the world. Something we also read in Acts 13 verse 47. When we read the Bible, we have to consider the whole Bible context. Today, some people that read prophecy often try to apply what it says about Israel to literal Israel. Big mistake. We cannot emphasize enough that God's purpose for us, spiritual Israel, is still the same. Send us an email to indestructiblekindness@gmail.com. We exist as God's church with a purpose, to be the light of the nations. If we just study the Bible and pray, we are not fulfilling our call. Those two elements, as important as they are, fulfill the Lord's purpose only when we shine and guide others to Him.